Are you concerned about all this corruption being misgendered as conspiracies? Well, don't you worry. Sit back, relax, and join in the conversation as we talk with today's guest. Welcome to another LSB Film Productions podcast with your host, Chris Brooks.
Right, welcome to another LSB Film podcast. It's me, Chris Brooks. Today's guest is the wonderful Justin Walker. Justin Walker is the co-founder of The Great Resist, and he is here today to talk to us about the Bradbury Pound, why it's important and why it needs to come back. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Chris, and good to see you again. Well, for those who don't know, that is your Bradbury Pound. What is it? It is a Treasury note, not a Bank of England note. And it is a Treasury note that's produced the same way as the coins in your pocket. And so your £2, your £1, your 10 shilling, well, you know, 50p, 20p, whatever. This is debt-free and interest-free money because it is based on a part of your nation's wealth. Now, at the moment, almost all the money that is in circulation is courtesy of the Bank of England and the private financial sector. And all that money is debt-laden, and it is created out of thin air.
Technically, it's not really money, is it?
It isn't. I mean, you're right. But the money in your pocket, your change, is real money. Mm-hmm. And the economy should be run by real money, sovereign money. Now, let's just very quickly go through the story of what happened in 1914, which gave us the Bradbury Pound. Now, at the outbreak of the First World War, when we declared war on August the 4th, 1914, we were on the gold standard. And that was the Bank of England was a private central bank, private bank, created in 1694 with a charter from William and Mary. And effectively, that is when the national debt started as well. Basically, the Bank of England was responsible for creating all the notes. And they're all debt-laden notes because they have, I promise to pay the bearer on demand the sum of. Okay? On a treasury note, you don't have that. Now, at the outbreak of the First World War, people were obviously very nervous about a global war and what that entailed. And the one thing they do know that when things go wrong, gold and silver goes up, especially gold. So knowing it was on the gold standard, people started queuing outside the Bank of England and the high street banks, clutching their Bank of England notes. And there were £5 notes in those. They didn't have £1 notes. There were £5 notes and went up to about £50. And you've got to remember that £1 then is the equivalent of about £160 today, thanks to inflation.
Which really, of course, that much of a difference?
Yeah, it's quite tremendous. Now, so people were clutching a £5 note, which is 500 plus quid, you know, wanting gold sovereigns, half gold sovereigns or gold sovereigns. And the gold. And of course, there wasn't the gold in the vaults because according to Thomas Johnston MP, who wrote The Finances and the Nation, who I came across because having been told about the Bradbury, he described that the Bank of England only had £9 million worth of gold, 9 million times 100, whatever it is today. So it's quite a lot of gold, but nonetheless, not enough to meet the demand of people wanting to change their pound notes into gold. Mm-hmm. So the governor of the Bank of England and some of the bigwigs from the City of London went running round to David Lloyd George, who was the Chancellor of the Exchequer before he became Prime Minister, saying quite simply, we need to do something. And they'd already thought about it because they got a bill through Parliament, the Currency and Notes Act, authorising the Treasury to increase M0. And that M0 is what they use today to create the coins in our pockets. So M0 to 100%. In other words, just get the notes out and treasury notes And these are going to be based on the wealth and creativity of the nation. So they're debt-free and interest-free. Now, when these notes, and they were only printed on one side for the first batch, an emergency batch printed on stamp paper, and they got these into the banks and into the City of London, and all the queues of people were told that this represents part of the wealth of the nation. They're nothing to do with the Bank of England, the private concern. These are real. This is real money, sovereign money, and everyone accepted them, and everyone was happy. So everyone went away, clutching these notes, a 10-shilling note, and these, without having to, without gold. In other words, they were happy to accept them because it worked. Now, the bankers, having been saved from financial collapse and went running back to David Lloyd George, and this is all written by Thomas Johnston MP. As I said, he's the only source I can find. Everyone else just has covered this up. This has been airbrushed out of history. So Thomas Johnston MP, by the way, he was an MP during the 1930s. Nobody had a bad word to say about him. And his legacy, he was the father of the Scottish hydroelectric scheme. So he in the Highlands. So he was a good man. And, pity we haven't gone. We had Andrew Bridgen in Parliament, who was a good man. But they're few and far between, as we both know. So going back to what the bankers, they went running back to David Lloyd George, and they said, we need now to go back to what we do. That is, you sell us gilts and bonds, we buy them at 3%, 3.5% interest. We will give you money, some of which, of course, is created completely out of thin air. Some of it's pension funds and all the rest of it today, that is. But, in those days, a lot of it would have been created out of thin air. And so essentially, the bankers wanted to be a part of the killing. They wanted to make a killing out of the killing. And of course, if you actually look at real history, you'll find that the bankers were involved with shenanigans with top-level people behind the scenes who were maneuvering Europe into the First World War, and they maneuvered Europe into the Second World War. There's still an awful lot to come out about real history, about who was doing what to who and persuading who, and etc. But the one thing you can guarantee, the bankers had their fingerprints all over both the Second World War and the First World War. But going back to the First World War, as a result of the Bradbury, and by the way, it was called the Bradbury, signed by Sir John Bradbury, who was the first Secretary to the Treasury. They carried on with the Bradbury for about 2 years in a prominent way, but then they just phased it out. The last Treasury note came out in about 1926. But it meant that by going back to the old way to pay for the First World War by creating gilts and bonds and selling them to the City of London, the private bankers and the financiers, that the national debt went up from £650 million, multiplied by 100 and whatever it is today, up to 7,500 million at the end of the First World War in 1918. So the bankers had made an absolute killing out of the appalling bloodshed on the Western Front and elsewhere. And as I said, it just shows you the mindset that we have with the banking world. Now, in 1930...
Would this have been like the Rothschild influence?
Well, this is what I'm going to come on to, because this is the next bit that really shows just what we're up against today. In 1930, the governor of the Bank of England then was a chap called Montague Norman. He became governor after the First World War, and he was the longest serving governor that the Bank of England had ever had. And of course, Bank of England was very much a private concern. It wasn't nationalized until 1946, 47. But as I will prove, when you say nationalize, there's no way HM Treasury controls what the Bank of England does. This new bank, which I'm about to talk about, a bank called the Bank for International Settlements, that nobody knows anything about, barely 1%. knows anything about this bank. And Montague Norman and his good friend Helmer Schlacht, who became Hitler's finance minister, they are the ones who launched this organization called the Bank for International Settlements.
Mm-hmm.
And it was set up initially, the cover story was to handle German war reparations better after the hyperinflation of the Weimar Republic. Now, the Bank for International Settlements very quickly morphed itself into becoming the central bank for the world's central banks. Currently, the Bank for International Settlements has 63 member central banks, including the Bank of England, the Federal Reserve, the what do you call it? The European Central Bank, Bank of Russia, Bank of Japan, Bank of China, etc., etc., etc. But it also looks after all the lesser central banks in the world as well. It is responsible for over 98%. Well, they say 95, it's nearly 98% of the world's money creation and money supply. And they are responsible, well, they've given themselves diplomatic immunity, so nobody can actually take them to court. I mean, it's staggering what is being allowed to happen. And nobody knows about it. I've asked 20 MPs over the last 10 years, what do you know about the Bank for International Settlements? None of them could tell me anything. So this organization, they hold important, there's a meeting which happens basically every 2 months, every 8 weeks or so. And the top 12 governors go to, at the weekend, they go to Basel in Switzerland, where the Bank for International Settlements has its headquarters. And quite literally, what is discussed amongst those 12, plus invited guests and others, you will not know. And there are no minutes taken, nothing. It's total secrecy. And you get this, I've got this information from this excellent book.
So a little bit like the Bilderberg meeting.
Sorry?
Tower of Basel. I said so. It's very similar to like the Bilderberg meetings, where it's just all really hush
It
hush.
is. It's the same sort of mindset. My uncle went to the very first Bilderberg, and he became a director of the Bank of England just after 1955. He became a director until 1972. And this is how I found out about everything, because a friend of my uncle, on his deathbed, another director of the Bank of England, got his son to ring me to tell me to research the Bradbury. Didn't say Bradbury Pound, just said Bradbury. And when you do, you'll find a solution to all of Britain's economic woes. Exact quote. And to this day, I don't know who they are because the number was withheld, but I was given this information, and I've been working on it for, well, since 2012. But going back to the Bank for International Settlements, so you have these secret meetings. Now, a historian called Carol Quigley, Professor Carol Quigley, he confirmed that there was the big banking dynasties, and you mentioned the House of Rothschild, but also the Warburgs, the Schieffs. I mean, there's about, God knows how many, about 7 or 8 of these top banking families. And they basically pull the strings behind the scenes. Now, when the governor of the Bank of England comes back from these secret meetings, one of the questions I asked the Chancellor of the Exchequer in this letter that I've written is, does the governor come and see you? There's no minutes taken. So does the governor come and tell you in detail what was discussed at those meetings? Or does the governor not tell you on a need-to-know basis, so you don't know, in which case you've got the Bank of England operating outside the remit of the HM Treasury? Now, here's something else. In my letter, I show a clip. It's all hyperlinks. I show a clip of Professor Werner, Richard Werner, who is a German economist, one of the most important economists living in the world today. And he states categorically on a program, it only takes 40 seconds to watch, that the City of London is a country in its own right. The square mile is legally classed as a sovereign state operating within our own country. And the monarch, on formal occasions, has to ask permission, touching the sword, to go in to the square mile for ceremonial occasions, whatever it is. Now, you've got the Bank of England effectively occupied, basically, the Bank of England sits in a different country to where HM Treasury is. So what on earth is going on here? What is the relationship between HM Treasury and the Bank of England? Supposedly nationalised. But now, of course, everything I'm trying to point out is it's showing that everything is effectively treasonous and criminal and fraudulent. The government could tomorrow go back to the Bradbury Pound, a new 2024 version of the Bradbury Pound. Sovereign money. I prefer to call it sovereign money. Debt-free, interest-free, sovereign money. It is based on the wealth of a nation. Currently, the Office of National Statistics says the assets that we own as a country and the creativity of the nation, we have a value of just over 40 trillion pounds. Now, you would then put a tiny fraction of that, probably about 1 trillion, 2 trillion, whatever, into liquidity, which you then upgrade what you do already with your coins, but we're already doing it with our coinage, you upgrade it to include much more. And with that money, you look after our public services, all the things that we depend upon, health, education, military, police, etc., etc. You look after the infrastructure, whether it's your transport, energy, whatever it is, and you protect your strategic industries. I mean, only in the last couple of days, we've heard that British Steel is now going to have to import steel. We're not going to actually make steel in this country.
Absolutely,
that is how it's looking,
isn't it? Absolutely ridiculous.
It's absolutely bloody ridiculous. So what we've got to do is instruct the government, because they've deliberately designed it, or they have, or shall we say, the City of London and the whole system have designed it so that people are ignorant about the entire financial system, the Bank for International Settlements, what happened in 1914. People don't know that sitting in Parliament is a gentleman called the City Remembrancer, a position that was created back in 1571 to protect the unique privileges that this City of London has, which effectively is making it a sovereign state within a sovereign state. People don't know this. Our ignorance is their shield for protection. Once we people start to understand the economics and the complete corruption that basically keeps the City of London afloat, once people understand that and how we are all victims of it, because we're all basically debt slaves to an entirely fraudulent system. So we have now, and this is why I've written this letter to Chancellor, 28 pages.
But the thing is, how do you get this fraudulent system rectified when the very people running the show are so corrupt?
Yeah. Right. Well, the thing I'm asking people to do, people watching your show, I'm asking everybody to send you've got a link to the letter, but I'll also give you where you can find it. It's at the greatrising.org, and it's www. whatever it is, the-great-rising.org. So there's a hyphen between the and great and rising. The-great-rising.org.
And to make it easier, I'll put the link in the video description. So
brilliant,
you just need to click on that.
And then I want people to email their MPs with a simple instruction that they require. Remember, the MPs are your servants. They're not there you're not going there to grovel to your MP. The MP is there as your servant. And you lawfully require this letter that I've written to be given to the Chancellor by that MP with an instruction for the 4 questions at the end of this detailed letter for the Chancellor to answer. And I very quickly, the 4 questions are: the first one, does the Chancellor of the Exchequer, does the Governor of the Bank of England brief the Chancellor on what is said at the Bank for International Settlements? How can it be that the Bank of England, the second question, how can the Bank of England be in a separate foreign country? How can this affect things? In other words, we want them to explain if Professor Werner is right or wrong. I know he's right, but nobody ever asks this publicly, so the time has come to ask this publicly. The third one, now Rachel Reeves or Rachel Thieves, as somebody remarked, commented rather amusingly, she went to Oxford, she went to the London School of Economics, and she worked at the Bank of England. So I want to know, did she know about the Bradbury Pound? Did she know what happened on August the 7th when the Bradbury Pound became available in high street banks and the Bank of England? Was she aware of it? And finally, the most important one of all, will you now do what the British government did on August the 7th and literally, so in other words, her budget, I mean, what makes you laugh? She says, I mean, have you noticed how Herr Starmer and all the others are all going on about, we have a £22 billion black hole. Do you know what that black hole actually is? It's just 3 months of interest payments for our national debt. And our national debt need never have happened because there was no need for a national debt if a government had been creating the wealth of the nation by,
Yeah,
debt.
absolutely. It's just an orchestrated debt, isn't it?
And especially as we had things like tally sticks. I mean, tally sticks were, again, when you paid your taxes, and of course, with the Bradbury, you may argue that direct taxation was a minimal need for it, but that's another story. But the point is, we had tally sticks whereby if you gave the Treasury your taxes, they would cut a stick with a particular way, and you get half of it. That could go into circulation, with the other half kept by the Treasury. That worked. I mean, there are other ways, but the point is, the Bradbury Pound worked brilliantly in 1914. It could work again today.
Absolutely. When did it stop being a thing?
Well, the last note, Treasury note, came out in around about 1926. So they phased it out. But as I said, the bankers, unfortunately, persuaded Lloyd George to phase them out quickly and to go back to selling bonds and gilts at 3.5%, and that's why our national debt shot up. So, I mean, David Lloyd George was not the innocent party. There's a lot about him that I'm still researching. He was heavily involved with the Zionist movement. We mustn't forget the famous Balfour Declaration of 1917. There are certainly links with other stuff going on. But I'm just about to, I've got David Lloyd George's memoirs. I'm about to delve into that. I mean, there's a lot there that needs digging. But David Lloyd George, like our politicians today, was not a shining virtue. And even Winston Churchill, I'm discovering, as we all know.
Oh, I was told he was a right arsehole.
Yeah. Well, I don't think there's. I mean, I like to quote Churchill at times because he was a fine orator, a brilliant painter. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff. But bottom line is, he was a useful idiot, and that's the best way I will do it. He was a useful idiot to the elite. They pulled his strings, his ego. He had black dog, he had depression, all these things. He had his flaws. We all have flaws. I have flaws. My wife tells me on a daily basis I have flaws. So we all have flaws. But she also says I'm revolting, so I'm doing something right. But anyway,
revolting in the disgusting way, or revolting as in revolting?
I couldn't possibly comment in case she's listening. No, but seriously, that's the other thing. We've got to keep a sense of humour. We've got to enjoy mocking them. Now, I will tell you, because of my uncle and others, I got to meet behind the scenes, and I got to see, this is going back a long time. These people, some of them are psychopaths, sociopaths, whatever, but the one thing they don't like is to be mocked and not taken seriously. So humour, banter, and mockery. Sound like Frankie Howard. Mockery is a marvelous thing. Mock these people. They are inadequates. Unfortunately, they are inadequates who are currently holding the purse strings. And that's what we've got to get them to release. And we have all the evidence we need.
No, that's good. That's good. I hear you have a great rising coming up. Is it the 9th of November?
Ooh, that's news to me. No, we haven't got anything planned at the moment. But as a group, we meet online. I think there are events happening all over, not necessarily under our name. We are a group of people who basically come up with stuff, and then we push it out there because none of us want political careers. None of us I mean, my ambition in this new house that we've got builders in and God knows at the moment, my ambition is to have a lovely man cave in my cellar, and I'm going to build my model railway and do my model ships. I don't want to be a Chancellor of the Exchequer or something. I've got no career, and I'm nearly 70, so I have no. I just want to make sure that before Mr. Reaper knocks on my door to take me out, that the Bradbury Pound. I've been at it for 12 years, and I just want to see the thing happen.
And
So,
how close would you say you are now compared to the 12 years when you started it? Are you
oh,
seeing
hugely.
hope?
As I said, if people, MPs, we've got 335 new MPs in Parliament at the moment, and those MPs are not totally embedded in the Westminster bubble. There's still probably some element of decency amongst them. Now, you could argue that the political system is such that you only get people on the ballot paper who are pretty awful, or who have, there is a way of controlling them because they've done naughty things in their lives. I mean, that's how
Compromised.
they're compromised, exactly. And of course, I must point this out. I haven't said this yet, and I think this is very important. If we go back to the Bradbury Pound and the power of sovereign money, debt-free, interest-free money, we must not allow Parliament to make decisions on how that money is used and how much is created, because I would not trust one of them with the power of the Bradbury Pound, mainly because, well, we've seen them taking gifts. They're lobbied the whole time by vested interests. You've got the political parties. You've got people who are career driven, climbing their greasy poles because their egos wants to take them to the top. I mean, these
So
are not
how would it be managed then? Because
right. I
obviously
would take a leaf
corruption
out.
is quite easily bred.
It is, and I think what you do is it's not 100% foolproof, but I think it would be a lot better than we have at the moment. Take a leaf out of the Anglo-Saxons and their kings. And the Anglo-Saxons, a king in Anglo-Saxon times had a witan, Wita, witan. And a witan was effectively an assembly of wise people. Now, all right, you could argue that in those days that just meant they were earls and thanes, and they were, you know, yeah.
We
But
actually
the
have a
point
Whitton
is,
group in Thetford.
yeah, exactly. So they were there to advise. Now, I would like to think I know people, random people, and they could be anything from the proverbial dustman to the proverbial duke. But you meet people who are thoroughly decent, who are honourable, who are have humility, integrity. They want to serve. They want to do their bit and no more than that. And when they've done their bit, they give it to somebody else to get on with. In other words, we're harnessing the real values of the human race. Now, we can do that, and we would have election. I think there should be, and this is my idea, and others will probably say, no, we've got better ideas. But I would suggest that you had a witan, a treasury witan, of around about 100 people elected from the population at large, and a process of doing that could be developed, how people, and you serve perhaps for a year, maybe 2 years. I don't know. That again can be debated. But the point is, once you've served, you stand down like a jury. You do your bit, you apply your critical thinking, you apply your common sense, you apply your wisdom and your experience. And that is something else. I think you've got to be experienced. So people over the age of 50 should be considered only. So you've got to have experience of life. You can't just come out of university and be expected to know everything. In fact, if you come out of university, you've been programmed to be on what the other side tells you.
You've been programmed to think Arthur's Martha. You've been programmed to think, yeah, God.
Yeah, exactly. So let's be. We have got to, knowing what's happening at the moment, how people have been deceived, how they're change agents and all this other stuff. We've now got to find a better way of allowing critical thinking, common sense, and service to get the other hand. And it is all about service. And it's not about receiving rewards and awards, oh, he's been made up to the Lord so and so, and he's done all this, he's got the OBE, the MBE, or whatever. I'm not interested. I hope to God I go to my
Not
grave with
especially when people like
nothing.
Jimmy Savile and all those
Well,
reprobates get all
exactly.
those
I,
rewards.
I will take it a badge of honor if I go to my grave without a single medal or anything dangling on my chest. I will just know in myself that I've done my bit.
Yeah.
That's how it should be.
Mm.
And the OBEs and all these wonderful awards should be given to the unsung heroes, like the lollipop ladies and the people who do their bit and they don't expect anything.
The people
But
that actually just make the world go round.
exactly,
Mm.
exactly. So I mean, I've always joked to people. I said, look, I'll just want to be prime minister. I don't even want to do a Liz Truss. I think just 1 week would do. I think I can do enough in 1 week, and then I'll bugger off and build my model railway. I mean, seriously, we've really got to look at the way we govern ourselves. We don't need all this government. We don't need all this, and of course, very large extent, we only have all this government because, well, because of the taxation
Of
and the
course it is.
financial
Yeah.
system that's
And to
trying
think
to
this is all
enslave you.
within like the last 100 years as well, isn't it, really?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's all been building up for this. And as somebody keeps pointing out, we are heading towards the Hunger Games society. And, where it's another feudal system whereby you just have these few overlords who know how to harness technology and artificial intelligence and all this other stuff. And the rest of us, because we've been dumbed down and we don't apply critical thinking, we don't think common sense, and we also feel powerless.
Mm.
And of course, ignorance too. I mean, ignorance is the shield that protects what is happening at the moment. Our
Yes.
collective ignorance is the way that they are protected.
Mm.
So we have to break down this ignorance, especially when it comes to money creation and money supply.
Absolutely. Now, could you expect much of a pushback? Now, the only reason why I say that is because you look at all these countries where they've tried to refuse the dollar, they've ended up getting bombed. We've now got these 15-minute neighborhoods being exposed where these hurricanes in Florida are, all these plans, and that Bill Gates has got patents for all these different hurricane things, fighting the beast, so to speak.
Well,
What
I, I'm
kind
gonna,
of pushback
I'm
would
gonna
you?
I'm gonna tell you now. Let's look at it this way. My uncle told me effectively 10,000 people run the world. A banker, a Dutch banker, Ronald Bernard, said, I think it was 8,500. Well, who knows? The world's population is 8 billion. It's almost 1 million of us for every one of these people
Mm.
who is in the driving seat of creating the agenda, the World Economic Forum, all these people. Now, you know, as I said before, it is our ignorance to allow this to happen. They are more worried that we start to wake up. And once we wake up, it'll just be there's going to be it's a razor blade between good and evil.
Mm.
There's no wall to sit on. It's a razor blade. You're either on the side of human values and doing what's right and morally right, or you're on the side of those who want to enslave to make life the misery for the many, for you to enjoy a lifestyle beyond all, what we can't
Yeah.
even imagine. Um, I I genuinely believe everything is starting to go in our way. As I said, we've got to use humor.
Hmm.
We don't want. I mean, we don't want a revolution. A revolution, you merely end up where you started. And more often than not, when you have the French and the Russian revolutions, you have the streets running in blood because they were controlled revolutions. They
Mm.
were merely removing one of their, if you like, control mechanisms to another control. Um, yeah, no. This has got to be a people's movement, and we just embrace values. And the most important thing is we do not put people onto pedestals. We don't need the Alexander Greats, Napoleon Bonapartes, all the big
Or
people
the
in
Nigel
history.
Farages.
Yeah, the Nigel Farages in particular, populists, Trumps, or any of them, and Tommy Robinson, and that's not his true name, whatever.
Mm.
I'm sorry, the Pied Piper of Tel Aviv, I call him, I'm afraid. Sorry, I'm past now. We don't need a history of personalities. We need a history of values, how humanity embraced those values, kept those values, and how we learnt from history. Because if we don't learn from history, and this is why history has been interfered with at universities and stuff, that's why the Bradbury Pound has been effectively airbrushed out of history. If I had not been told about the word Bradbury, then I came across this MP, Thomas Johnston, in the 1930s. He'd written a book, The Finances on the Nation, and then in the what was it, chapter 6, Usury on the Great War. If I hadn't read that, I wouldn't have known anything about that. You know, this has been effectively airbrushed out of history. So this is why we have, it's a historical event. There's no conspiracy theory. That wretched girl at the BBC, when she does her fact checker, well, I'm sorry, Bradbury Pound, there it is. And it wasn't based by gold. It wasn't based on gold. It wasn't. It was based on the assets, the wealth and the creativity of the nation. She can't avoid that. These are facts. And it's the same way as your currency, your change is produced in your pockets.
Absolutely. Well, let's hope for the best then. So just remind people what you want them to do. You want them to ring
this is very, very important. I want people, please, to send the email your MP with an instruction, very polite, you require them to send that letter, that 28-page letter that I've done, to the Chancellor, saying that you support it, you'd like, and what you want, a covering letter from the MP stating that his or her constituent wants the 4 questions at the end of the letter to be answered in full.
Right.
Okay. We've really got to make them. I already know that hundreds of these letters are going to MPs. I mean, we are, in fact, it could be thousands now.
No, that's good.
So this is important. It's to start, and it's also to get ordinary people. When we hear about economics, and I can speak as one of those, because until I got told about the Bradbury, if somebody had said to me, "Oh, Justin, you'll be talking about economics," I'd have said, "Rubbish. I don't know anything about it." My eyes glaze over when I hear an economist with all their formulae and their graphs and their language. And of course, this is I missed this point, and this is extremely important. When you look at all the economic schools, you've got the Austrian school, the Keynesian school, the school of new economics, all these different schools. The one thing not one of them embraces is this simple fact. And I was given this fact by somebody who claimed that he was a distantly related to Vincent Vickers, who was a director of the Bank of England, during the time of the Bradbury in the First World War. He saw how the Bradbury worked. He then declared war on Montague Norman and his Bank for International Settlements. He died in 1939 at the outbreak of the Second World War. He wrote a book called Economic Tribulation. His name was Vincent Vickers. He was part of the Vickers armaments factories. I mean, he was an establishment figure in the City of London. But he went to his death saying the only way to create money is for the nation to create the money based on the wealth of the nation. Now, what's interesting is that all these different schools of economic thought don't recognize this one important point that this fellow who claimed he was a relation of Vincent Vickers, he told me this. He said, all economists do not recognize that the entire financial system of the world is in unelected, unaccountable hands of private people who meet in complete secrecy. So we've got people who meet in secrecy, who are unelected, unaccountable, and who quite simply just, have no accountability, no transparency, absolutely nothing at all. The whole system is corrupt. And it can't be tinkered with. It has to be replaced lock, stock, and barrel. And by going back to sovereign money, properly going back to sovereign money, that will literally bring down the cancer that is the present financial system.
Well, let's live in hope, because that day can't come quick enough.
Well, we've all got to do something. Don't leave it to me or you or anyone else. Everybody watching this program have got to do their bit. And of course, it's not just your MPs. Talk to your councillors. They're the ones who have got...
We've tried that.
I know. I suppose soon as I said
Oh
that, I
dear,
thought,
have we
but
tried
you
to?
guys at Thetford are a shining example of how the people have got to stand up to
We
what's
are, but the
going on.
thing that pisses me off the most is that you've still got the majority of Thetford again. Oh, you fucking rebels. Oh, yes. They're
Yeah,
just
but
so
you've only just
thick.
started.
I
Come
know.
on, this is brilliant. I mean, what you did, you're only 2 years old. Bloody hell, I've been at this game for 12 years. I can see we're moving in the right direction. If it's like a super tanker gradually moving around, you can see the rudder may have been turned a minute or two ago, but now we can see the bloody thing moving. And we've got to keep that momentum
Yeah,
going.
definitely.
Don't feel if you have any reverses that you give up. No, you don't bloody give up. You keep bloody going on. And I'm being serious now. We are winning. And when you think that there's a million of us for every one of them, and all right, all most of our people are asleep, but when they wake up, they're on our side. Unless they're psychopaths, they are on our side.
Mm,
So the tide is turning. The destiny, our true destiny is starting to appear. But the most important thing is don't put your faith into individuals. Put your faith into actual facts and what needs the solutions. And
solutions.
we spent as a movement, the truth movement, the freedom movement, whatever you want to call the movement, we are at the moment spent all our time looking at what they're doing to us. What we need now is a strategy
And what we can
whereby
do to
they
them.
react to us. If we're always reacting to them, they're winning.
Mm,
Once the table is turned, once they react to us, then we've won.
mm,
Because they are, as I said, a tiny dot telling the rest of us what we can or cannot do. These
absolutely.
people are just imbeciles, traitors. Well, they're not even worth talking about. But we've given them power. And the key to it all is money creation and money supply. Those who control the money control the world, and they control the world stage and what happens on that stage. If they can't control the money, we've won.
Brilliant. Well, that's a good place to end that on then. A bit of a high. Thank you very much for joining me on the show
Thank you,
to talk
Chris.
about this. I
Thank
wish you all the
you.
very best
Yes.
with it. And I please everyone do what we've asked. Contact your MPs and get this letter sent off. Let's start
Yeah,
making some
get
change.
them and tell the Chancellor she has to answer those 4 questions.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much. Look after
Thank
yourselves.
you.
Take care, and I'll speak to you all again soon. Bye for now.
Lovely. Thanks, Chris.